Talking financial organization and a professional practice does not have to be boring. Are you ready for a few money in, money out ideas? It's Susan Gunn coming directly to your head to make you think. Can you handle the truth? Because she is known for being energetic, laughs a lot, and gives honest, sometimes direct, but always practical advice. It's time now for Money In, Money Out.
Welcome back. At the time of this recording, Texas is still boasting proud of Baylor University's win of the NCAA tournament. Oh my gosh, it was truly an amazing game. The team worked together like a well-oiled machine. I couldn't believe it. They were all focused as a team on winning that NCAA trophy. They knew what it would take to get there. I mean, it was, I have never seen, or maybe I probably have, but it's been a long time, a team work so cohesively together. And they seem to have checked their egos at the door. Because it seemed like it was all about teamwork. Can you tell I'm still stuttering over it because I am playing it back in my head as I'm talking about it. It was truly riveting to watch. But let's not forget about the coach. The coach came on board after some very tragic times for Baylor basketball. He regrouped and reformed the team. Amazingly regrouped and reformed that team. It wasn't instant. And I'm sure he had some frustrating years, but you know what? He didn't give up. He persevered, and he checked his ego at the door. The sincerity, perseverance, and determination of the whole team paid off. Oh my gosh, in a big way. This podcast was already planned, but it could not have been better timing. My guest at the table today is Lynne Leggett, who is not a stranger to basketball or coaching. Lynne is the CEO of Victory Dental Management. Her younger years were found on the court, then becoming a coach herself. But her true joy is coaching professional practices because the coaching methodology and the approach is the same on or off the court. Welcome to the table, Lynne. It's so fun to have you.
Oh, Susan, thank you so much for inviting me. And man, Baylor did take it to them, didn't they?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it was a romp. And I was not expecting that big of a victory. I mean, they never lost the lead.
Yeah, it was astounding. I just wish Baylor women could have been in the final game like the Baylor men.
Wouldn't it have been awesome if they'd have both been able to come out on top? And you and I've talked about the last few seconds of the game and the foul that was not called.
Yep. The aforementioned unmentioned foul that was never called. And there were two fouls.
Two fouls. Yeah, the two fouls.
Yep. But
they were robbed.
They were very robbed. And, you know, as a coach, you can't, you really should not blame everything on the refs. That's never a good thing in front of your team. But in that case, you didn't even need to see the replay to be able to see what happened. But, you know, what's done is done, and you work hard for next season.
I did watch the replay many, many times. I was just...
I did too.
It's like, oh my gosh, how does this happen? I mean, she got slapped twice. Actually, right in front of the ref. How do they miss that?
If I'm totally and bluntly honest with you, in total transparency, I was given a gift, which was a great gift, and I probably need to get more of these, of the foam bricks, because I have a habit during basketball games of not agreeing with the refs and throwing things. So I watched that game by myself, which was a good thing, and I was throwing the two that I have, and I just could not believe. So yes, I saw that non-called replay several times, and then replaying it in my head just got even more worse. So
yeah. And to be clear, you didn't have a dog in the fight, so you were really not on one side or the other, except you don't like UConn.
Oh, there's so many reasons why I don't like UConn, but I would prefer Kim over Gino any day. And for your listeners, that's the coach of Baylor women over the coach of Connecticut women. because ultimately I am a Pat Summitt fan from University of Tennessee on the women's side.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too.
That's where my roots are. But
sometime I'll have to talk to you, and I've never told you this, that I met Nancy Lieberman and had an awesome conversation with her. We'll do that on the backside.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that on the back. She lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so it was really a very interesting conversation. But I want those bricks, by the way. You need to tell me what the bricks are, because we're both come from a background of athletics, and so we talk athletics all the time, Lynn and I do. But mine was tennis, and so I record all the tennis tournaments. And my nephew has said many times that he'll walk in and I'm yelling at the TV for a missed shot, and you'd think it was a basketball tournament or a football game or even a baseball game. But baseball is my second love. But no, it's tennis, and they missed a shot or they hit the net or something really stupid. But it's easy to sit on the couch and to do that. Okay. We could talk, as you can see, listeners, we could talk sports forever. But tell me, Lynn, how did you make the jump from the basketball team to dental team coaching?
Well, as you know, because we've been friends for years, I haven't always worked in the dental industry, but I've used within my past employment in different industries, using coaching. It's always been more natural for me to continue that within dentistry. So as a basketball coach, I've coached girls ages 5 to 18, varsity, and those playing AAU. So the ones that want to go and onto the college level and get college scholarships. So bringing out their potential has always been the priority for me, because I'm realistic. I know the chance of me coaching a player that's going to end up in the WNBA, it's slight at best. Okay. So that's never been my purpose. My win-loss has never been my purpose. Teaching skills that they can use for the rest of their life after they stop playing, that is what I'm about. And teaching my players how to have confidence and how to come back after being knocked down is so much more important to me as a coach, because that skill, we know they're going to use that for the rest of their life.
Yeah, no kidding. And that's valuable. That's really valuable.
When I get really close with my team, if you would allow, I'd love to share some examples with that, because,
sure.
In this day and age, I used to get phone calls from players, but now it's a Facebook message or a Snapchat or, an email or a text, whatever. But in the past, especially with my players that did not play in college, I had one particularly that she knew, because I talk about mindset and attitude all the time, and we'll get into that a little later. But my goal of teaching them how to bring out their potential is, if you think it, then that's what's going to happen. So that's the first reaction. And with sports psychology, that's the first thing we've been taught as players, that, we've got to think we're going to make that, in my instance, the next shot, the foul shot, the whatever, or hold the defense, whatever we're talking about. And so the first day of any practice, I always do this with all of my teams, my little ones to my big ones. It's going to be, you cannot say one word on my court, and that's going to be can't. And the reason why you cannot say that on my court is because I don't want you thinking that. That's really at the end of the day, that's what I'm going for, is their mental toughness, and to build that muscle as well as their physical muscles. So in order to get them to not say that, there has to be a slight penalty, right? They have to feel the pain. Well, they're going to run around the basketball court.
Oh, you're one of those coaches.
I am. And sometimes they might have to use a trash can. Sometimes they don't. I'm not going to kill them. I'm not unrealistic, but at the same time, they're going to learn that that word is associated with something negative. That's the connection that I want my player to make, because the email I got, it was great. And if you would have known this player when she played for me, it was even better. She goes, Coach, I was sitting there. It was my microbiology exam. And I sat there going, I can't do this. And she goes, no, Coach is going to make me run. And she yelled it out. And her professor goes, who's going to make you run? And she's like, no, you don't understand. She goes, stop. And then she focused back on her exam. And afterwards, the professor said, what were you talking about? And she said, all right, when I was in high school, this is what my coach taught me. And I just sat there and she goes, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to blurt that out at the exam, but I just had to get myself back into, the right mindset of being able to take this exam. And, she had that moment, but that's the kind of connection that'll last the rest of their life, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Something happens at work, or something happens if they go on to graduate school, or whatever it can be. You need to know you can get out of that hole. And, if you say something negative, then I'm glad that, and if you knew more about that player, that those connections were very strong with that one, between that word and the negative physical pain that occurred. But she got on board. She finally got on board with it. So I'm very
if we would learn that lesson when we were younger, we wouldn't grow up to be so cynical, would we?
It's funny you say that, because Megan, for all of you who don't know who Megan is, she's my daughter, and she played basketball for me and AAU, and then she also played volleyball, but she's in nursing school right now. So when she would have different psychology classes, she actually called me and said, Mom, I want to thank you for raising me with the growth mindset. And I went, whoa, you must have had psych class today. Let's talk more about that. You never come at me with that kind of verbiage. So what happened? And she told her professor about it. And, she's like, your mom's going to have to come here and lecture one day. And she goes, no, she's not. I don't want my mom here. She's not coming to campus.
That would be a little overwhelming, I think. That's cool.
But, after the story, I mean, the importance of the coach's leadership skills, I mean, that's really what we're talking about, right? Is being able to have that. For the coach, this is where the plan is developed. Whether you're talking about basketball or in the dental practice, the coach's leadership skills, you got to create a game plan, but also the practice plan. It all comes down to preparation and to practice, because practice time is for the team, but it's also for the coach to know what to do in every single circumstances that can happen in a game. Because you and I both know coaches don't wait till game plan or the game time to actually create something. I mean, right. They've already prepared for all those situations in practice. What often, so we're going to keep it to basketball here for a second and not tennis or baseball. Okay. What offensive sets or defensive sets that you want to run against each team? You want to press full court, half court, whatever you need to do, but you tear down that game film, not only of your own team, but also of each opponent. And you search as the coach for their strengths and weaknesses. And then the additional part of that is knowing on your own team, who are the players that I can go to when everybody is stressed? Because Susan, I don't think we talk enough about that. When we're under stress, you can see two different things versus if you weren't stressed. And as the coach, especially of your dental practice, and as the leader of your practice, you need to understand your own strengths and weaknesses and discuss with your assistant coaches what to do when. I mean, I think that's a huge part of that. So,
well, if we haven't had this last year to teach us about that.
Exactly.
I mean, this whole last year has taught us that we've got go-to people.
Yep, absolutely.
Or should have anyway.
And yeah, if you don't, there's a void there.
Yeah.
You realize what you need. Absolutely. But you can imagine if you're seeing your coach, let's go back to basketball for a second. If you're seeing your coach freak out,
right,
the team's going to freak out. I mean, it's just a natural, right, because they're looking at you to lead no matter what circumstances. I mean, I know there was a game that we were in a tournament, and for your listeners that don't understand how AAU works, think of it like the NCAA tournament. If you don't win, you don't continue playing. So you've got to continue that momentum. Of course, your goal is always to be in that championship game at the end of the tournament, to be one of the two best teams. And hopefully you've done everything you need to do to be able to win that next game. But it's that whole idea of, if I've got a 1 point lead or I'm under 1 point, what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I can't freak
Right.
out and stress because my team, man, and teenage girls, are you kidding me? They are going to model everything that I do as the coach. I mean, let's be
Right.
real.
Yeah.
But the cool thing, Susan, is the same thing can happen in a dental office. The team in the dental office is looking to see how the doctor is going to react, or worse, doesn't react. I mean, let's not forget, in a dental practice also is predominantly female. Now, I know with teenage girls, I can see that wall when it comes up. I mean, I can see it. And I know it's my job to get that wall to go down and stay down, because if your team stops listening to you, you're toast. I mean, you're in front of teenage girls, right?
Right.
I am the safe place for my basketball teams. I'm also the safe place for my doctors, my clients, and the teams that work for my clients. So I've even had clients actually tell me that I am the sanity break that they need, because they don't feel like they can turn to any other place.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of go back to, because this kind of flew through my head real quick and I don't want to lose it. Talking about the basketball team as a coach, talking about Baylor again, which players can hit the threes and which ones don't. And so the game plan isn't to have a 2-pointer try to shoot it from the 3-point line. You don't put them in a position to where they're going to fail. You only put them in a position to where they're going to succeed for the team.
Yep.
And so in order to do that, you have to know your players' strengths and weaknesses and what they're good at and what they're not good at, and putting them into the right positions. So, I mean, just like to carry over for the tennis, there are singles players and there are double players. And there are a lot of single players that do crossover. But, there are a lot of double players that never do singles. And they work better with the team or with somebody else. Mm-hmm. And they know their strength. And so that is their strength. You have to know what somebody's going to be good at before you put them in position. And the vision that I got when you were talking a second ago of the coach was the team meetings that you have in the morning, talking about not the opposition of the other team, but the patients that are coming in and what difficulties they might have had the prior visit, and how to greet that customer or greet that patient, because they are customers. I say that all the time. That tend to forget that patients are customers. Do you ever see that?
That, in fact, it's funny you say that, because that's one of my, on my bio, I talk about the customer experience, because it is a customer experience when they come to your practice. I could have said patient. I don't mean patient. I mean customer. Yeah. I totally get what you're saying.
It's different. I talk that lingo a lot when I'm talking about the QuickBooks stuff, but
sure.
Anyways, that was kind of what I was thinking about when you encourage them to be the very best that they can be. But in order to be able to do that, you really have to know what they're best at.
Yep. And I'll tell you, to sort of piggyback on what you just said, as a coach, I have 12 players. It doesn't matter if it's, high school, AAU, whatever. I can show up with 12 players on my team. So you can only start 5. I guarantee you the rest of them have a role on that team to play.
Yes.
I may play 8 deep, but if somebody really gets in foul trouble, and this, of course, always happens where somebody's sick. Gee, let's think about COVID. We don't know anything about how to substitute players during all of this. It's not only the game plan encompasses everything that is humanly possible to think about. It's almost like a huge document that's an if-then statement. It's the easiest way to look at it.
Yeah.
One of the larger perspectives I like is teaching dentists and office managers leadership through the coaching model. It actually works on a lot of different levels, right? Because everyone can visualize what a coach does. We've talked about 4 sports already in our brief conversation thus far, but it changes your perspective when you look at coaching on leadership, and it takes advantage of 2 natural abilities that most people have in dentistry. everybody I've come across, they know how to encourage others, because who doesn't want to encourage them on their oral health, right? But also education. So it doesn't matter your role on the team, whether you're an assistant, a hygienist, you work on the admin, or you're the dentist. Those two things, that's what makes coaching and me teaching them how to coach so natural, because it's so much easier for them, because it's easier for them to learn and actually accomplish it. Because I think a lot of people like to take leadership and go, oh, that's fuzzy. Well, it can be fuzzy. That's why I want to teach people how to coach, because coaching is not fuzzy. I give you the parameters of how to do that and teach you how to do that. But, you know, as adult learners, when we can attach a visual connection to something, we got it.
Can you imagine coaching a team and they don't know where to go in a defense mode? So all the players are out on one end playing defense and there's no plan. You know, so they don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know what the expectation is from the coach. And yet I see that all the time in the dental practice. And so how can that be successful? And yet usually sometimes it's just a very chaotic place, and there's a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts. But still, if you don't know what you're supposed to do, that just doesn't work.
You know, I didn't even ask you if I could share this story, but that is a perfect segue into telling you how I even started coaching at a particular private school. And it was where my kids went to school, because we were watching, for your audience, girls typically had their games right before the boys' game. So at the end of a girls' game, when everybody's coming in, because nobody goes to a girls' game, let's be honest. But they should, because if you love the sport of basketball, fundamentally, you're going to love the women's game versus the men's game, because it's not a dunking contest. But anyway, I will not get on my high horse about that.
I would join you. We'll do that on another podcast.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do that. But this particular instance, I'm watching the team that I'm looking at, and they didn't know what to do, Susan. Exactly what you said before. There were 5 girls on the court for our home team where my kids went to school, and this coach is yelling at them. I mean, losing his mind yelling at them. So what do you do when you what happens when that happens, right? Yeah. You tear down a team. The girls don't have any confidence whatsoever. Yeah. The coach should have never been coaching, because he didn't know what he was doing. Just because his daughter played on the team doesn't mean he knew what he was doing. And I'm watching this, and I am losing it on the sideline. And I'm like, I so badly wanted to go down, but of course, if I did, he would have gotten a technical and take over. But I'm stomping and I'm trying to help from the stands, and everybody around me, they're like, if you're so much better, why don't you coach? I'm like, well, I will. I've done it before. So I ended up having a conversation with the athletic director and explained to him what this coach was putting the team through. It was horrible. So I ended up being the head coach.
Oh, there you go.
Because I'm not going to let girls go through that. It was horrible. And you know, the worst part, and one of my arguments with the athletic director for me to be able to coach the team, I said, listen, you don't believe me, but as a past player who's had multiple knee surgeries and can't play anymore, trust me when I tell you, this is flowing over into the classroom. And if you don't believe me, ask their teachers. And all of them said, oh my gosh, she's totally right. Because when they came in, everybody was making fun of them. Well, my teams hold their heads high because if you put it all out on the court and you do your best and you constantly improve, what else can I possibly ask of you?
Well, and Lynn, we've all played for those coaches.
No.
I mean, I had really one great coach, and he was a Davis Cup winner. He was amazing. And he made us run laps too. So, but he was really good. And I've had some really bad ones. And the really bad ones, if you think about those things, I mean, you tapped into it. If you think about how you felt when you had that coach, I never felt like I was going to be better. I never felt like I was any good. I never thought I had a future, and probably should never had that coach. He had his favorites, and and he was a guy, and it was a women's tennis team, and that's us. That's where I'll draw the line on that. But
Oh, I
hey,
won't. I'll
yeah,
tell you. I think the gender that you coach, you should be that gender.
yeah, I do too. I do too. Anyways, it was not in a good time
I'm
and not
sorry you went through that.
encouragement. Yeah, and so you know how you feel, and yet as a business owner and as a business coach, then you certainly don't want to carry that over into a business because
Mhm.
you know how they feel. And yet there are some, like I said, the Baylor coach Scott does, that do not check their ego at the door.
Oh,
So
oh yeah. It's sad because I've had people ask me what my win-loss record is, and I know it, but I don't. That's not the reason why I do it. And then my next question is, well, what grade? Because if you want to do 5-year-olds, that's different than my AAU. So you need to be more specific. And then I was like, well, do you want just girls, or do you want to know when I coach guys? Because I've coached both. And guys are so simple. I mean, they really are compared to girls because the hit games just aren't taking place like that. It's different, but we won't talk about that right now. We will really get off track.
well, it's how then does a coach? How does a coach then? I mean, other than the obvious things, it's so much easier for us to talk about this when you use basketball as the example. How does a dentist then, or a business owner, because I have people that listen to the podcast that are all over, make sure that the team knows their specific goals and responsibilities?
Well, I think as the coach, you've got to break down everything. You've got to look at the whole, break it into pieces, and understand how the pieces relate to the whole. So what do I mean by that? Breaking down their specific roles and responsibilities within the team. Because I do that on site all the time with clients. Because sometimes the doctor is just not able to see that as clearly as I am, since I'm not there every day, and I don't come in with a bias. It's really interesting how the bias actually makes everybody feel within the practice. So
Right.
I think you create your mission and vision statements first. The next thing you do is break things down. Oh, well, let me back up for a second. When I create a vision statement, it's not like everybody else's vision statement. It is part of the business plan. So I get really, really picky and nitpicky to the point that it can take sometimes 8 hours to create a vision statement. That's how in depth I'm going. So let me keep going then. So every team understands their role and responsibility, but during that time, the team's going to naturally create more trust and respect for one another, since they're going to be able to have that buy-in with what you want to do and create within your dental practice. I mean, most team members do not know what everybody does on a daily basis in detail, in a practice. And after doing this for so many years with clients on site, I've actually seen team members apologize to one another, Susan, after we've gone through this exercise, because they didn't realize the heavy load that they were responsible for. And that's really going to be critical in building that team cohesion. You can never have enough team cohesion. I've never seen it on a basketball court, and I've never seen it in a dental practice.
No, if we had a good example of maximum cohesion, it would have been Baylor on the court. I mean, seriously, that was the ultimate maximum cohesion I've ever seen on a court. That's why that game was so thrilling. I'm sorry if you're a Gonzaga fan, but if whoever's listening, but I'm just sorry. I've been a Baylor basketball fan for a while, so I'm just going to brag on them.
For Gonzaga, from that standpoint, I mean, they did the best they could.
Yeah, they did.
So, and sometimes as the coach, it's really hard to realize that you played a better team, because I mean, to get to this point in the tournament, you have prepared during the off season. Once the season starts, every single conference game, non-conference game, all the other junk you had to deal with this past season with COVID and everything else that happened. So it just doesn't just go, oh, we're in the NCAA tournament. you had to be picked for it depending on your win-loss record and all these other things. So Gonzaga, they were just outplayed that night.
They were outplayed.
I think they were tired personally. I think they ran out of steam as well. But, you're conditioned for that too. It's not an excuse.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
And to kind of go back to something that I had another one of those visions of, it doesn't always just apply to our practice. And you think about dentistry as a whole, and you think about all the different players that are within dentistry and the different specializations that are in dentistry. I see a lot of, again, 2-pointers trying to do 3-point shots that really should not be trying to take the shots if they're not a periodontist or they're not skilled at implants. Or, I hear about these things that are probably not good. And I know that you get better with practice, but that's not the training ground for that. And so to me, that kind of crosses an ethical thing. But you definitely want to be an ethical coach in that perspective, because if you're trying those things in your practice and you're not skilled at that, and that is not your lane, so to speak, that you need to be in, then your team sees you doing that. And that presents itself to be an unethical situation, which you don't want to be. And so coaches kind of really, the team leaders and the coaches really have to toe that higher line and to take that stronger stance. And there have been thousands of stories, right, Lynn, that if the coaches have gotten themselves into trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Even just yelling or abuse. Abuse.
But, all of that can be avoided because that goes back to a particular dentist. Let's say that they're going outside their lane. The lane would have been determined by their mission and vision statement. So that just tells me they haven't done the prep work as a team, because there should be if there's any confusion, then you haven't done it right. That's the thing that bothers me practice time is when you're not seeing patients, and game time is when you're seeing patients, and you need to be able to practice for all of that.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, I do something when I encourage my teams to be the best they can be. I'm going to give you a basketball analogy first. High school game.
Wait, a basketball analogy?
I know. What? Break back. What? So in a high school has 32 minutes to a game, and college has 40 minutes. Some people may go, oh, I never knew that. But yeah, actually that's true. So
okay.
When I work with my basketball teams, I teach them to focus on each possession. Now, what does that really mean? If you focus on each possession, that's going to make a difference with your mindset and your concentration level. Because once that possession's over with, there's nothing you can do. You can't rewind and go back in the past. You can only work on those things that are happening that next point, right? So your mental strength, that focus is all that you can influence. So it's all about mindset and attitude with that. And I know I mentioned that in the beginning, but I think there's a huge difference between those two, Susan. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to use the word irk because it makes me so mad. I'm trying to use nice language. I don't like it when people use the terms attitude and mindset and use them interchangeably because they are so fundamentally different. I teach that attitude is emotional and it can change depending on the environment. Mindset is something completely different, and it's intentional, and it requires hard work and focus to maintain that. So, in the dental practice, the focus is the same, right? Instead of a ball possession, think of a patient contact. That will really change your perspective and help with your self-discipline. And that goes back to what we've been talking about the whole time, about being able to create things as a team, being able to work together as a team. There really is a set steps that you can do to create all of that.
So let's say the middle of the day, something happens in the practice. The game is not going as, again, to continue the basketball analogy, the day is not going as it was planned. And let's say the team is behind and is really struggling. What should the coach do?
Well, first of all, the coach has to recognize that something went off the rails. Most of the time in the dental practice, that's not going to happen till the end of the day. And if somebody's caught it, if you've caught it before lunch, then you reassess. And even though you're going to have a team huddle at the beginning of the day, you can huddle everybody up and go, listen, play each possession, right? What's done is done. Now, what we can only control and influence is what's in front of us. So you've got to keep them focused or pepped up or, however, supported, however you want to use the words in your dental practice. You need to get them refocused and figure out what happened. Is it something that can be easily fixed? I find a lot of things like that happen because maybe somebody had to leave early, that somebody, didn't show up at work, but it goes back to understanding your player's strengths and weaknesses and knowing who you can put in at different times, because life happens. So we need to be prepared for it. And if you're not taking the time to do your huddle the right way, and you're not taking the time to have your monthly team meetings like you should be, stuff is going to fall through the cracks. So if there's nothing else that people walk away with, all of this has to do with preparation. But it's knowing what to prepare and how to prepare. That's what makes a difference with coaching.
I've heard a lot of this happening, kind of that scenario when they have an angry patient that comes in, a patient maybe that doesn't want to wear their mask. We've had a few of those. I hear about those in the dental groups, who are so verbally abusive that it throws the team for the rest of the day. It's like, what do you do?
Well, the first thing is there should be no patient that walks through the door and they don't understand the expectations of what the visit's going to be like. So that's the first thing that could have been avoided with the proper planning. But, stuff happens, so we go forward. I guess that they're not showing a whole lot of mental strength that throws off the rest of their day because one person yelled at them. I think that comes down to a communication issue of knowing how to handle different types of patients, different types of personalities, really being prepared. And I'm not going to say it all day, being prepared for all of those different things that when you're prepared for something, Susan, and you know what words, maybe not, I don't like scripts. I like bullet points because then everybody can be very similar. I don't like a bunch of robots repeating the same thing. That's why I've never been a script girl. I've been a bullet point girl, but not a script girl ever, because you can't teach communication. Because what happens if somebody asks you a question that you don't have a script for? What do? That's the problem with scripts. And I know there are tons of people that'll disagree with me. That's fine. You don't have to do it the way I do it. I'm okay with that. But teaching people how to communicate and being prepared for those wacky patients, right? We've all had wacky patients during COVID, and they can come out of left field, like you said, because maybe it's the patient that's so mild-mannered and the behavior that you see is so different than what you saw, 6 months ago. That is a really great indication that something else is going on with that patient and their stress. Well, we have a lot of stress right now with COVID. We have a lot of stress with not knowing how things are going to end up, or maybe they're waiting for a vaccination. Maybe they're waiting for a lot of different things. You don't know until you have that conversation. You go, Mr. Jones, are you okay? Because this is not how I've seen you walk in our practice before. What's going on? And it's asking the right question at the right time that will allow them to share with you. And you show your concern because you're actually pulling them aside and saying, are you okay? How can I help you? No one will ever not enjoy being asked that question.
Instead of taking it personally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think I hear the same thing, Susan. I've had emails from clients telling me, man, my front desk was ripped today. There were so many people that were so rude. What's happening? Yeah. And there was 1 week where it was happening to everybody. And Facebook was lighting up. You wouldn't believe this or that. And it comes back to what we just said. You got to ask what's going on. They could have a family member that was in the hospital for COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't
well,
know.
And that also plays into, again, knowing what people you have in the front position to take that from a patient, to be able to handle it, to not take it personally. And, versus the one that will take it personally or will be cold to the patient, which is also not what you need.
Right.
Because this last year, I'll tell you I say this in my ethics talk a lot, we have become an extremely critical, hostile, angry society. And it's like, guys, so we have to choose to be the one that's different. We have to choose to put on the kindness regardless. And as a coach, you've got to be able to coach that. Hey, guys, come on, team. We're good. We're all good. This person had a really rough day, and we were the ones that just got it, and it's okay. We gave them an avenue to be able to vent. I hope that they're doing well. Let's keep them in our prayers, and let's move on.
Yep.
Like you said, it's the mindset.
And I think in that scenario as well, the coach of the dental practice needs to be cognizant of that, not just what just happened in the op. And I'll tell you, I always honor the fact, every dentist that ever gets in touch with me, whether we end up working together or not, Susan, the first thing I do is thank you for getting in touch with me, because when you're asking for help, and if for some reason, if I can't help you, I'll get you in touch with somebody that can, because that you got to honor that, or I feel like I have to honor that, because that's a really, really big step, because in dentistry, everybody wants to be perfect. And it's annoying because you're never going to be perfect. I mean, you may want perfect clinical skills and a perfect margin. Okay, that's different. But human behavior, we are fallible. We are never going to be perfect. So all you can do is keep striving to be the best you can possibly be.
Right.
But the whole perfection thing, I hate that as a goal. It's not a goal for me as a basketball coach, and it's definitely not a goal for me as a dental coach.
I just definitely want to not take up space. I don't want to be a burden, and I want to be a blessing. And that's what I tell myself every day. It's like, so be the blessing, because somebody else needs that. Be that coach, be the listening ear, do whatever we can to help. And that's, I mean, again, basketball, if you're a dental practice owner, you need to keep in your head the sideline coach, how he's always going, come on, team, come on. All right.
Encourager.
Yeah. Yeah. He's an encourager. Okay. Stay in your lane. Defense, Susan, go hit that 3-point. I could never do it. Unless it was a granny shot between my legs. Remember those?
Shot.
I am way too short for basketball, so we're talking totally out of my lane. But I loved it because, people that are tall can do it better than me.
But that's interesting. And totally a sideline to what you just said. I've had some really itty bitties. And, from age 5 to 18, there's a big segue right there with, and then when puberty hits and all this other stuff, the little ones, it's not that you don't do well with basketball, because I'll take any height. It's the tall ones fall. Let me teach you how to get them to fall. Everybody's built with certain things. It's just the good coaches that can say, let me bring out your strengths and show you how to do this. Because Susan, if during our playing days, if you really wanted to play ball, if I would have coached you, you would have been a great ball player if you wanted it bad enough.
Yeah, true.
Because it doesn't matter your height.
True.
I love all those films that say it's about the heart. It is about the heart.
Well, and so much nowadays there's so much more available than when we were growing up to be able to learn. I mean, even the stuff that's online, I learned by watching. That's how I was coached. I watched other people playing at the parks, and that's what I learned from. Now, I didn't always put what they did into my game plan, but I watched. And that's where I think study clubs come into good use too.
Oh, yeah.
Because they can speak with each other and find out what everybody else is doing. And again, they may not choose to put that in their game plan, but it might cause them to think of something else that they would want to put in their game plan. So, or having a consultant like you in the practice come in, say, hey, let's talk about your game plan.
You mentioned study clubs, and I like talking to study clubs when I speak, as well as larger audiences, because when they trust me to be able to say, hey, I've got this problem, or, how would you handle this? I love Q&A because it's applicable. There's nothing worse. I don't know about you, but I hate going to a place and going, did I not learn anything? If I didn't walk away with at least one nugget, then I'm going to be upset. But I'd rather be able to say, if this is a real life situation, let's break it down. Let's talk about what could have taken place, because, the history is a great teacher. And it doesn't mean that we're perfect. It doesn't mean that we handle everything correctly, the right way the first time. But by golly, we can certainly learn and get better as time goes by.
Absolutely. At the point that we stop learning is a problem. I'm older and I try to learn new things and I'll get stymied. But I was on a call the other day and who was it? I can't remember. Anyway, I was talking to somebody and I had to click through some screens. And the guy said, oh my gosh, I had to choose my Medicare insurance. That's what it was. And I was clicking through the screens and he goes, I swear, I don't think I've ever had anybody do that as quick as you did. Well, that's because.
Let me tell you what I do for a living there, buddy.
But even then, sometimes, a determination, it's a mindset, like what you said.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an attitude. It is a mindset, and it's that discipline. So, wow, this has been so much fun. And seriously, we could talk forever. I thank you so much for joining us. Do you have anything else that you would like to add that we have not said? I'm sure you have a basketball analogy or two that we haven't discussed yet.
What? Me? What? But, I guess it goes back to, Susan, most dentists tell me that they have a team working for them. That seems to be the vernacular that everybody wants to use. Well, I'm going to roll with that for a minute. If that's true, then the leader of a team is called a coach. So I hope during our time today that I've given your audience some things to think about in their own practice, and have explained why learning to be a coach of your dental team, it really is the most natural leadership style a dentist can have. I want to open it up too, that if I can answer any questions for your audience or help in any way, please get in touch with me. And if they're curious, I actually did write a book about this, and it's called You Can't Coach Quit.
That's a catchy title. And how do they get this book? I will put it in the show notes, but tell them on the air.
I think if you go to Amazon, you can pull up You Can't Coach Quit, and that's where you can purchase it. Thank you for asking.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, and I wanted to say that, just kind of piggyback on something you said. I actually changed the practice management chart of accounts. I don't think I've ever told you this. I have the practice management chart of accounts, and instead of calling them employees, and then I went to staff, but then it was like back to employees because, can't call them staff because staph infection, all that stuff I kept hearing. So then I went, well, you know what? They're team members.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they are team member expenses. That's the whole category. So it's a mindset. It is a mindset. And you're right. And it's an awesome book. Let me just endorse that. Easy to read, easy to implement ideas. And so you can get that on Amazon.com. Again, thank you, Lynne. I just appreciate you so much. And I appreciate your friendship. Lynne and I have shared a lot of the life and heartache of life the last few years. So it's been awesome. The message you've shared today is so timely and so needed for anyone in or out of dental practices. If you would like to find out more about Lynne's practice coaching, her website address is victorydentalmanagement.com. And I will have her email and her website listed in the show notes. Thank you so much again, Lynne. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Susan, for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Always good. We always have fun talking. You never know what we're going to say, but we always have fun talking.
Ain't that the truth?
It is the truth. So just closing now, one of the headlines after Baylor's win from CBS Sports was amazing. This is a quote, Baylor Scott Drew never let others change his story, path, or program. And that's how he led Baylor to its first title. It took 18 years, but they did it. They did it. They were amazing and dominated the court. They might have dominated the course too, but they did dominate the court. Make no mistake, this did not happen by chance. This happened by careful planning and by intentional coaching. During the interview after the game, Scott gave credit to who he called a player-led team with great basketball players, but even better people. I just loved that. Great players, but better people. Isn't that amazing? Can you say that about your team? Congratulations to Scott Drew, to those great team members, and to Baylor University. What an amazing perspective. Coaching is extreme encouragement to the best. And we suddenly lost one of those extreme encouragers in the dental industry this past month. Virginia Moore was a friend, a colleague, a guest on this podcast, consultant to thousands of practices internationally, a valuable professional speaker at conferences internationally. But at the heart of Virginia was the ability to pull out the very best in those she was around. She was, in a lot of perspective, our dental industry coach. One of them, but a very strong leader in our industry. It is a very hard loss for us, and Lynn and I both were friends. That whole paragraph was really hard to say. But I just thank you, Virginia, for your encouragement in our lives. We will miss you immensely, but know we will ultimately be together again to share our hearts and laughter. And if you never heard her laugh was infectious and filled the room. But she was a coach, truly to the T. If you are the leader of a business, have you checked your ego at the door? Do you coach your team to be great at what they do, but also to be better people? When you do this, you win. And you can win big. So until next time, keep leading with integrity.
That's a wrap for this podcast of Money In, Money Out. Thanks for listening. Be sure to write down the most valuable tip you learned today so you don't forget it. And remember, you can find out more about all the valuable books and services Susan has to offer at www.susangunsolutions.com.